Hello everyone. Managed to make a little bit of progress on my Crimean War project in the form of this group of Chasseurs d'Afrique, French cavalry. I decided to do them before I made my start on the Russians, just as a little kind of distraction. I'm not going to, well, I will eventually paint up a French army, but having finished the British for the time being and moving on to the Russians, I just wanted to do this group because they are, of course, the cavalry that supported the charge of the Light Brigade at the Battle of Balaclava on the left flank of the Light Brigade, and cleared the Russian artillery from the Fedukian Heights, which were positioned on the north side of the valley, firing into the left flank of the Light Brigade. So I thought they make a just sort of interesting diversion, really, just temporary distraction before I move on to the Russians. Very colourful. I think they were formed in 1831 to fight in Algeria, and usual Eureka standard. Really like Eureka horses, and the nice thing about these horses, as separate from the British, the cavalry that I've already been painting, is that all the horse furniture and the saddle rolls and blanket rolls and all that kind of thing are really simple, really easy to paint. There's nothing difficult to make out on it. If I had any criticisms of it, I would say, of these figures, I would say that I had my doubts about some of the actual uniform details. The uniform as described in focus, yeah. As described in that Robert Wilkinson Latham book that I've referred to in the past, gives them as having a wide red cummerbund around their waist, over which there was a white belt. And in fact, when you Google and search online, a lot of the images of Chasseurs d'Afrique do actually show that cummerbund, but it's not depicted on these figures. And again, it's put me in sort of doubt, really. I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. These figures are what they are, and I don't like to paint imaginary detail onto figures, so I just painted the blue tunics and the red overalls without the sort of middle cummerbund. But I've found the faults in that Wilkinson Latham book in the past, so wasn't sure whether that was inaccurate or whether these figures are inaccurate, because the only other direct kind of reference to the Crimean War I could find was an oil painting by a French painter called Fichier, who actually painted the Chasseurs d'Afrique at the Battle of Balaclava, and he doesn't show them as wearing a red cummerbund. So it put me in some doubt as to which was the most accurate way of depicting them. But anyway, as I say, there's nothing you can do about it unless you want to go to extremes of modelling it with green stuff or whatever, but my skills aren't up to that. And the other thing that is definitely wrong, I think, about these figures is that the boots were worn over the overalls, whereas here the overalls go down to the feet over the boots. So yeah, that is, I'm pretty sure that is wrong. But nice figures as always, as I say, up to the usual standard. There is a bit of an oddity on the Eureka website. You cannot get these figures any longer through Fighting 15s in the UK. They've ceased being the agent for Eureka. It's not a problem. You can you know, ordering direct from Eureka has never been difficult in the past, and you know, sometimes you get the figures more promptly than you would do from a UK supplier. But the weird thing about the Eureka website is they've got photographs of all of these figures, and this figure that is on the grey horse here, they show as being the officer. They show the officer, sorry, they show the figure that actually is the officer as being this figure here. For some reason that doesn't want to focus. Well, anyway, take my word for it, as that figure there, whereas in fact that figure there is one of the charging, there's three variants of charging, and it's this figure here. Oh, zoom out a little bit just to get it to focus. It's this figure here which is actually the officer, and the image on the website has him as one of the galloping line, you know, those ordinary troopers. So they've completely muddled that around. I mean, the way you can tell the trumpeter or bugler is easy, because he's actually got the bugle on where he's carrying it over his shoulder, so it's on his back. The officer is obviously the officer, because instead of the headgear, which is known as a casquette, which is quite tall, he has a sort of slightly flatter, more capey-like headgear, and the biggest giveaway, he has a lot of black embroidery on his tunic, both back and front. So he is clearly the officer. Whereas Fighting 15 used to sell a sort of command pack, so it didn't matter if you ordered the command pack, it didn't matter which figure you got, because you would get one of each. But with Eureka, I'm not sure whether it's just a mistake on the website with the photographs, or whether if you wanted a single figure for an officer but you didn't want the bugler or the trumpeter, whether you'd get the wrong figure. I don't know. It might be worth checking that if you do get around to buying any of these figures yourself. And the another thing, probably long-term viewers of my channel will know, is I do have a bit of a bee in my bonnet about horses and ponies, and when it's appropriate to depict a rider as being on a horse or a smaller pony. And the reason the Chasseurs d'Afrique were so successful at the Battle of Balaclava in clearing the Russians from the Fedukhin Heights was that the Russians were on top of this large hill, rocky kind of, you know, ground, waist high, undergrowth and such, and they didn't imagine that any enemy forces would be able to climb it to threaten their flank. And of course the Chasseurs d'Afrique were quite accustomed to fighting in the mountainous terrain of Algeria, and it wasn't a problem to them. But half the reason they were able to get up that hillside was that they were on ponies, not on horses. They rode Arab ponies. So really, if you're going to be, you know, pedantic about it, these should be on smaller mounts. But I love the Eureka horses so much. I mean, they have so much kind of dynamic pose in them that I'm not going to complain about that. But anyway, that's just an aside. Yeah, and fun to paint. I will get on to the Russian army now. I've got a massive stock of unpainted figures in my collection, so it'll be a while before I have to order any more anyway. But as I say, unless Eureka find a new agent in the UK, you have to get them through Eureka Direct now in Australia. Okay, that's it. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye for now.